Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's probably
Yeah, he has never exaggerated before.
right.
No, I like to call it the Rodney Dangerfield of amateur astronomy. My, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so let me ask what I believe to be true, but I'll be able to share my screen as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll make some life easier if I
Yeah.
want to
You
explain
could use
something.
your hands and describe what nebula looks like, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
They're
But
Well,
like
I can
hard.
just point at the wall behind me. You know,
oh, that'll
there's one.
work. That'll work.
Yeah.
So we already have people logging in.
Cool.
Yeah. And they're anxious to see you and know more about you, Adam. So
And I will try to play the Ed McMahon. I will try to kibitz along with Scott, but not get in the way of either one of you here.
oh
Well,
no.
I think I think your addition would probably would add the most variety. So
Mhm.
I would enjoy your commentary, questions, inquiries, whatever they might
Oh
be.
yeah.
I will
Right.
certainly try to contribute without.
Because we haven't interacted that much,
Yeah,
David.
no, yeah. And we've been associates for a long time now.
Well, the same is true for Scott. So yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I think the last time, well, certainly I saw you at AIC, but I think the last time before that was many years. There was like a big span, okay?
Yeah.
And we were, um, it might have been an ASP thing, possibly.
I don't. I yeah. Been in when
I
we
just
say many
remember
years.
you were standing amongst a row of science posters, and it wasn't the AAS, that was for sure. You know,
No, it
so
wasn't.
yeah, so it was like
I don't know.
it was. You remember the ASP used to have those universe conferences,
They
so
were great meetings
they
back
were.
in the
Yeah,
day, yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That when we say there, a long time, that many things happened in that time. So I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But through social media, the magic of social media, I get to see what you're doing, and and that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
So how are things going at the magazine, David?
They're going really well. Scott and I were talking a bit. I mean, we're looking at a major project now that's retooling the whole website and do a kind of a new generation website, which is a big to do. But the whole, people being stuck at home, it's really been a renaissance of people
Sure.
getting into observing, and so the numbers on things for the magazine, for the social media, the website as it is now, even, which is archaic. The products we've been producing have been tremendous this year. You hate to be happy about something in all of the
I think it's true in
suffering.
almost
Yeah.
all. Yeah, I mean, I think it's true for almost all facets of
Mm,
astronomy. That
yeah.
it's really opened up some interest and avenues that were just not really available or considered prior to just
Mm,
hanging out at home. So
mhm, mhm. So
yeah,
oddly enough, it's really thriving
yeah,
now.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I love it that people are getting so interested in astronomy and astrophotography and of all ages. So, I mean, in the show, we have our showroom open. You have to come in with mask on and all the rest of it. But we have 80 and 90-year-olds coming in, and we've got, kids coming in, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Mm,
really, really interested. You don't see many teens getting involved, because they're, we were talking, David and I were talking about that too, because you have kind of a, that's socially when people start getting to know each other and stuff like that. And then,
yeah.
then maybe in your once you graduate high school, you're either working on a career or you're going to college or university. You don't have any money, right? So it doesn't mean you couldn't do astronomy, okay? But and it seems like after people get back maybe in their 30s, then they start thinking about it again.
Mhm.
But I think most people have to have a reasonably good astronomy experience of some sort when they're a child.
Hmm.
You know, if they're taken out with their parents to look at the stars, they go camping, they watched some movie or something that made a big impact on them, or maybe they saw incredible astrophotographs from Adam Bloch, you
No,
know, so,
no, no.
right? And
No, I
that's a
do think,
huge part of outreach in
yeah,
our community is this photography, and you've done a lot of it, so.
I have, although I would argue that the more visceral forms of that introduction, I think are more powerful. So I would say that although I'm not well known for it, but
Mhm.
it's my work in public outreach and actually delivering the presentations that if there was to be a spark or an inspiration or a perspective changing, whatever it is, I think it
Yeah,
probably happened there, not by looking at pictures. Pictures are great, but especially today with it's just almost the sheer number of pictures and both from professional world and also the amateur world. I think it's
yeah.
more difficult to get that kind of reaction. So yeah, I think it's real. When you look through a telescope, it's real. When you feel cold and you're just looking at the universe, and I mean, that's memorable stuff.
Right.
To me, nothing beats live photons.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
nothing against
no,
imaging, but what I'm saying is, going out under the sky and seeing this stuff yourself, as opposed to kids saying, "Oh, that's kind of cool," and running back in on the Xbox. That the reality of things is so valuable, I think,
yeah.
to try to ingrain kids with, and not sort of living in the fantasy world all the time.
One of the things that I was sure to try to do, um, one of the downsides of pictures is that pictures are not interactive. You
Mhm.
don't have any control over what you're looking at.
Hmm.
But at a telescope, one of the nice things you can do as far as like a public program is you can give them some measure of control. You can focus the telescope, you can allow them to move around,
Very true.
select other things to look at, to try to see things in different ways, get another second look, to basically practice to see the universe in a way that probably most people don't exercise or have the opportunity to do.
Hmm.
So that measure of control in the experience itself, I think, is also intangibly powerful.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would
Agreed.
agree.
Yep.
I would agree. We have people commenting in our live chat right now. Somebody's already signed up for one of your programs, Adam.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the commentary, I put with the post, I put your website there so people could find out more about your
Okay.
educational offerings and stuff. And I think that's very cool. You
Yeah, I have a
are.
couple of websites. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're to me, you are like one of, I'm a huge fan of Ansel Adams, and when I was a teenager, I used to correspond with him. And
Wow.
yeah, and I
Well,
always
let
wanted
me
to
let
take
that
his.
let me let that sink in for a moment. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive. Go ahead.
He and I always wanted to take his workshops, but they were always full. They were always filled,
Oh
and I
my
could
God.
never get in.
Yeah, wow.
But you offering these kinds of workshops, I mean, you are definitely, if there are Ansel Adamses of astrophotography, you are definitely one of them. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah,
I would say that I am fortunate. I'm not an Ansel Adams, but I am fortunate that I did begin at the time that there was this transition from film to the digital CCD world, right?
yeah,
That transition happened in the early 90s. Wow.
yeah.
Uh,
Sorry about that.
hold on, I'm watching this. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So
And here
I'll
we
finish the
are.
thought. Yeah,
Here
I'll
we
finish
are.
the thought when you
If
guys
that
are
didn't like give you
heart palpitation.
a heart palpitation or a jump start to your heart if you needed it, okay,
Okay.
which some of us might. So we are here, I mean, with two really amazing people. We've got Adam Bloch, incredible master astrophotographer, and Dave Eicher from Astronomy magazine. master of the universe. Okay, so there you go. And Scott Roberts, the cheerleader of all this stuff. So anyhow, I have been after talking to Adam for a while about doing a live cast so that we could learn more about his life, what inspired him, of course, his iconic astrophotography and stuff. I know, we were very fortunate to get David Eicher in his busy schedule, because Adam and David have, many of Adam's astrophotography ends up in Astronomy magazine, and there you go, right on the cover, David in particular, loves astrophotography. He's always putting something on Facebook. I think every day you're putting something up. David Eicher has his own APOD, and so you should tune into that. But Adam has been at this for a very long time. I think we first know of each other something like 20, 25 years ago, something like that.
Yes.
It may not be quite that long, but it's been a while.
No, that's the right math.
Yeah. And, so to see and I remember, of course, your astrophotography was always good, but it took like giant leaps at times, where it was like, I would look at this image and I go, wow, how does anybody make anything like that? So because you're, really competing with professional observatories and, so it's inspiring.
Well, let me say a few words because we were off, not really on. So
Yeah.
I'll just finish the thought in that. I've really been fortunate to have started at the time where there was the transition from film to the digital CCD world of astrophotography, and that in and of itself was an evolution. So being part of that evolution, and I would claim, a significant period of time, because it is on the order of 20 plus years, has really given me the opportunity to evolve myself as an astrophotographer with experience with all kinds of software, different kinds of data, different kinds of problem solving experiences. And so it's really that I would take, some pride in, is just that determination to kind of persist in doing that through this time. And so that's really how it began.
Right.
Adam, at the magazine, we get deluged with things, with images all the time, and have seen, I've been there since 1982, and I just really never found the exit, so I've seen it for a long, long time, for a whole generation. You've been a master craftsman, and also very open and sharing your expertise with the whole world, the whole community of astronomy enthusiasts. So I have a number of questions and things that I'd like to point out that make you very unique among imagers and so on. But if you would step back, you became interested in astronomy, in the subject, at a very, very early age, didn't you?
Yeah. So, you were talking, Scott was talking earlier about the idea that, there is sometimes that inspiration that might get people that spark to become interested, and that might happen at different points in a person's life. With me, I have no memory of not being interested. So I am that weird person that this has just always been for me. I don't know what the heck it is. I literally, if I stand outside and I see dots in the sky, sometimes I look at pieces of paper and it might be black pieces of paper and it has little, could be my dandruff. I don't know. And I think, man, that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I am just so
look at that cluster there.
There's something about the scintillation of starlight looking at the sky itself that just always does it for me. And it's almost inexplicable, although I do have a nice talk on that particular topic, but that's something else. Yeah.
And you got your first telescope when you were very, very young too, did you not?
Yeah. So my parents saw the interest and they did what any parent might do. Because when you're a kid, the level of commitment or seriousness is, you gotta watch it. So they gave me a refractor that was kind of a toy refractor, although it did have the moniker, it did have the advertisement on the side. It basically said, a hobby today, a profession tomorrow, right?
That's right.
So that was the first box I saw, and it so happens that I was able to make it my livelihood in studying astronomy. But that was at the age of 7? I got that toy telescope. And later, of course, when I expressed that there's not a whole lot you can do with it, but I'm still interested, then my parents got, and it's sitting over here, my Astroscan, which was the product by Edmund Scientific. Yep.
With the spherical mount on the bottom.
Yeah, I don't want to say bong, but yes.
The bong scope, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. And that telescope for me really did open up the universe at some level, because then I could see things that I couldn't see with my unaided eyes, and I could actually point it and know that I was looking at what I was supposed to be looking at. So the Pleiades, the Orion Nebula, I remember looking at Halley's Comet with it, things like that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was occasionally I talk to my product developers and I take them down memory lane of, because I knew Dick Nelson, and some of the old guard of the telescope manufacturers before Tom Johnson, before John Diebel, before all those guys. There was a whole group of manufacturers that were, now in their silver years, and Tom Cave was another one of them, and these people. And I show them old images of the old product and stuff, and just to kind of give them an idea of where they come from is in making new products. And I think it's important to kind of look back and see what it was. But for you as an astrophotographer, did you kind of study, or do you find the lineage of astrophotographers interesting? I mean, because astrophotography and regular photography are just, I mean, it's like there was an advance here, okay, and then there was an advance there, and so the study and the whole field of photography is really intertwined with astronomy.
It is, although with me, the funny thing is that I came about learning it in a way that I would say is somewhat unique, in that, and you probably know this, the first telescope that I really employed astrophotography in a level of some seriousness would be the Meade LX200. Now, I don't want to say anything bad about Meade LX200s, but when I was using a Meade LX200, which is more than 20 years ago, it was not designed to do astrophotography.
Right.
It was a telescope designed to look through.
Right.
Computerized, yes, but not really designed for the tolerances that are necessary to easily do astrophotography.
And that was true. It was true, and it was done on purpose. Because at that time, the number of astrophotographers that were really serious about it and could do good work versus visual astronomers. You would have 20 visual astronomers to every astrophotographer. Back then.
So my experience was, and today I still would claim I don't necessarily know the art of photography. What I did do in the course of beginning with that Meade LX200, and then later using a Ritchie-Chrétien telescope and so on. This is when I managed the observing programs at Kitt Peak National Observatory. I had the opportunity to literally night after night practice this thing of processing images using a telescope. So as you know, there are two parts of the equation. One part is the acquisition of the data, made somewhat difficult at the time. And then there's the other part, which is the processing of that data on a computer. So both of those parts of this process I learned, but I did it within my own bubble, a bubble on a mountain. There just weren't at the time any, we have today YouTube videos and books and things that didn't exist.
That's right.
And so people would talk to each other and they would trade, processes and techniques and things that they were doing, but otherwise you were in your bubble. And I think what is also interesting is at the time, because of that, many of the astrophotographers of the time, they had very specific styles. And that's really because they were doing things in the very particular way that ended up making pictures look as they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I come from that time. So it was interesting, but I had the fortune of doing in 2 weeks, maybe a month, more than many amateur astronomers might do in 6 months or a year.
That's right.
And that's really where my growth, if you will, was enabled and took place in terms of the technicalities of doing astrophotography.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one thing that's struck me early on with you when you were really getting going long ago, because we lived in a sea of astro imagers for quite a while there who were taking and submitting to the magazine their 110th shot of the Orion Nebula
Oh, yes.
and their 76th
Yes.
photo of the
Yes.
Pleiades. And
Yeah, I had a mission. Yeah.
I mean, not only have you become one of the masters in terms of quality of color deep sky imaging among a very small select handful of people in the world,
Yeah.
but you early on even went after interesting, weird objects that not everyone in the universe was out there shooting, strange interacting galaxies,
Right.
galaxies with odd morphological types, faint, unusual planetary nebulae, open clusters that nobody would pay any attention to.
Right.
What inspired you to be so diverse and to choose objects that were so interesting to go after?
Okay, so well, the first part of the answer is really easy, because everyone wants to be an explorer. You want to discover things. I was fortunate that, again, because I had access to good equipment certainly at a very good site, and I could literally take a picture of something that in its own way, perhaps no person has ever seen in that way before.
Mhm.
Who would pass up on that opportunity? I mean, that's like, that's good stuff.
Mhm.
To be the first person to enjoy, some little nebula, some corner of the universe that no one has really spent a lot of time to look at. Nowadays, of course, many of those corners have been looked at, although here and there you can still find some interesting things. And with that, would you mind if I actually show you an example of that?
Sure.
Please.
Okay, so I'm
I
gonna.
mean, no, I would, no, I want to see it. Okay.
So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully that is my mess of a desktop that you're seeing.
Look at that kitty.
Okay, so there's a kitty. This is my website, adamblockphotos.com, one of the websites anyway.
Uh-huh.
And the example I would show, I think, is this
Oh,
thing.
wow. Look at that.
So I'm going to guess that you probably didn't know the name of this thing. And more interesting to me, now I have to remember the name. What is this, V1025, Tori?
I think so.
Yeah. So I believe if we type here V1025, Tori, will it work? Will it work? It will. See, this is what interests me. You can look in the digital sky surveys in one form or another, and they may or may not. I mean, this is certainly won't always be true, but certainly at the time, 20 years ago, was true, and nowadays still somewhat true. There is the hint that this could be something interesting here. It doesn't necessarily look like the most, who would spend 20 hours on this thing, but it has that potential that I thought. So I would always be looking out for these things, even though it doesn't have a name. I'd still want to point it doesn't have a common or well-known name. I'd still want to point the telescope at it and spend that time to really see what's there. to uncover something that perhaps no one has seen very well before. I wanted to know what color it was. I didn't know what color it was. You look at that picture and you really can't tell because the picture isn't deep enough. But
With the
now here,
Valentine, though, it looks like a heart around with
it's
a,
weird.
you know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of weird. It
golden
has,
star in the middle of it.
You
yep,
can almost imagine the three-dimensionality of it quite well too in this image,
yeah.
sitting in this middle of the cocoon there, the star. Yeah.
A much more recent example is something that a friend, Joseph Judas, helped.
Wow.
It's another
Mm.
one of these. I seem to like these dusty environs of these T-Tauri type stars, but
Yeah.
they're pretty cool. They are just
Looks
totally unique. Every one of them is
mysterious.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Celestial infants.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'll stop sharing for a moment until we need to again.
Those are
Yes.
fantastic shots, Adam.
Right.
Goodness.
So,
Yeah.
but that's the answer to the question. It is to literally see something that no one has seen before, and then of course, the other side of the equation is to share. It wasn't for me. It is great to be that person, but then I want to turn around and show. Look at this thing. Really, this is amazing, and that has always been an impetus for me, both in terms of public outreach, just in terms of doing public speaking, but also in the astrophotography, especially the astrophotography, because it has such great reach. People everywhere can see the pictures, and that's really awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
The last place that you and I met was the Advanced Imaging Conference in
Right.
San Jose.
Right.
And I know that you're one of the people that I believe you're on the board of directors, or maybe you were one of the
Yeah, they did.
formed
This
the
past
organization. Is that
yeah
right?
this past year they invited me to be on the board, so that was really an honor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So and that is a wonderland of astrophotography. The people just getting started to really advanced astrophotographers such as yourself are there.
Right.
If anybody watching this program has the opportunity, and they only do it, I think, every 2 years. This is definitely something you're going to want to attend. But maybe before you attend that, you're going to want to take some courses from Adam Block.
Well,
And-
there's another small update, and this is for especially, of course, for the astrophotographers in the audience, which is that AIC, we decided to open up the library of videos. So this is the website, and you can see that the next conference is going to be next year in the fall.
Mhm. Okay.
And we're of course hoping that everything will unfold well with vaccines and everything, so that we can do this in person. It's looking favorable, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
But the library is now available to anyone. So if you, now this becomes a little bit tricky for me. I think this will work. Let's see. Ooh, look at that. It does. That part you don't need to see. This part's more interesting. So once you have an account, which is free, you can enter the digital library and then go to a year and see the presentations given by the very best astrophotographers in the world on all number of subjects, whether it's processing or the equipment or whatever.
Yeah.
This is a huge resource. And then, of course, we would hope that people having seen this information would want to join us at AIC and enjoy that atmosphere of a conference in person. But it's open to everyone. So you'll see here is my presentation, Adam Block, but you can see some other very prominent names here. And this is just 2019. You can see the other years as well.
That's great. I would certainly say that AIC is probably if not the most important, astrophotography conference. It's got to be one of the top three. So, and I believe it's the most advanced there. I mean, the most interesting there is, because I've been to many conferences, and people kept recommending I go to this one, and I go, well, I used to think in terms of numbers of how many people would show up at a conference, and now I realize it doesn't matter how many people show up at a conference. It's really about the quality of that conference.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and AIC is an amazing event from a quality standpoint, and you know that because when you go there, there are so many international people who've shown up. They're coming in from all over the world to interact for that weekend. You know, so.
But
If-
but Scott, now we don't even have to take your word for it. You can go to the site and listen to the people. You can
Absolutely.
actually see what we're talking about here.
That's right.
Exactly right.
That's right. That's right.
It certainly is at the cutting edge, and it certainly is, at least a portion of the presentations will astonish the level of sophistication that amateurs are now doing, both in terms of equipment and the knowledge of what they're going after, which was very different than it was 20 years ago, and the level of detail in image processing now can be mind-boggling. So this is not necessarily a conference where every session is aimed at a beginner. It can be quite sophisticated.
Yeah, we try to have that mix because, and in fact, not only the mix, but to offer a way that people can see multiple opportunities to see a particular presentation. Sometimes if it's only available once and then you have some conflict, you have to choose. We do the best we can to have, sometimes the presenters being so popular will give their presentations twice to be sure to accommodate as many people as possible. So yeah, all of that's in play.
Right. Now, Adam, your work has been used at major observatories, major science institutions, Space Telescope Science Institute, Spitzer, Chandra, probably observatories around the world. How did that begin for you? Were people looking at Astronomy magazine and going, "Holy smokes"? We need to get in touch with this guy Adam Block, or
No, it's really more the part that that David was talking about,
yeah,
because I had such a large gamut of interests in terms of wanting to take pictures of various things. They happen to be a lot of very interesting astrophysical objects. For example, I'm thinking of Chandra, and then I'm thinking of R Aquarii. That's a relatively small thing, and not a lot of people would spend a whole lot of time on it, but I did. And they later, some of the principal investigators, asked me, "Can we use your image because it serves as a wonderful visual optical reference for the work that they're doing in these other wavelengths?" And of course, I said yes. That's
sure.
really how it's happened. It's more that I was taking pictures of interesting astrophysical objects.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's an honor in itself,
it
and
is. It is.
something I'm sure you're very proud of. I would be.
Yeah.
But when you think of it from another aspect, it helped them do the kind of outreach that they needed to do within their own professional community. Because you have to spur the imagination. You have to inspire them. And that inspiration is the fuel that will let a researcher look at numbers and pore over data, and do the kind of the mundane stuff that it takes. But
For many professional astronomers, it is actually literally a mandate in their proposals that some fraction of it needs to have public outreach. Now, that doesn't mean that all professional astronomers, having experienced many of them, are all that excited about that, because
Yeah, right.
sometimes that is difficult to do. So someone like myself can be a conduit or a resource to help enable some of that outreach through reference images, or even sometimes data that helps grease those wheels and satisfy some other facet of the research. So yeah, that's another reason why there was some interest in doing other forms of outreach, especially in the professional community, because it's actually part of some of their proposals.
And Adam, in your time in Tucson, you've had both, with the University of Arizona, at Mount Lemmon, you've had you've enabled people from beginners to relatively experienced astronomy enthusiasts to come and image with you. And
I
that's
used to
kind
do
of
that.
like, that's like winning the lottery for you can go and in person be with one of the greats and image. But what is that experience like for you? And what is it like for those people who came and were able to see and learn about astroimaging from one of the masters?
Hmm. I would say that most of the people that visited didn't know anything about me. And so they really wanted the experience of coming to a telescope and being an astronomer for a night or two or whatever the period was. And so what that was like for me was to try to give them that experience, but at the same time, the real experience when you go to a professional observatory is that you as the observer, you really need to be quite prepared. You need to know everything you're going to want to do because there's such limited time to do it in, and you don't want to miss every second is precious, right? You don't want to miss those opportunities. Now, when a visitor comes to stay and experience being an astronomer, I have to help them to want to be that kind of excited and at the same time uh, that same level of focus to be like an astronomer. So I wanted them to try to give me an idea what would they like to take a picture of, and um, or otherwise, it's not looking all that good over there now. Maybe we should do something else. And so I tried to guide them in that process, and then reach something that would excite them and something that I knew that I could provide for them. Uh, Part of the process, though, for me was acquisition of the data is really not that exciting, right? Because just to control the telescope to point it somewhere while you're sitting with me, I mean, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. It's really the processing of the data that's kind of interesting. So when the data was coming in, I would try to do what I can to show interesting elements of explaining about images and explaining about how it goes together. And then when I have enough of it, of course, to put it together, oftentimes, though, I wouldn't be able to do everything in a single night. So I would give people enough information that they could get a sense of the flavor without having to watch me do all those mouse clicks. And then later, of course, I would spend some time to create a quality image from that data that they would get. So they really got to see the process. And of course, they got the very best that I could do with whatever it is that we got on those nights. So that's kind of what it looked like for a visitor to come. Yeah.
I think such moments, though, are kind of life changing. I have talked to people who did that program with you, and it is something that they go, yeah, and I spent a night with Adam Block, doing astrophotography, and it's a big deal for them because it was a moment of mentorship that took them to another level, and that when that kind of thing happens, because they're all kind of they're doing this personal exploration, this personal discovery, situation. I think it takes a good mentor to get them over that tipping point, where they can go and understand the universe that they live in a little bit better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people walked away with a greater appreciation of, um, well, there are a lot of facets. They really got to see the equipment that's used. They really got to see what is involved in the data itself. The most people in the public don't really appreciate what raw data looks like and everything you have to do in order to both calibrate it and then kind of the mechanics of putting it together. And it all deals with the fact that we're looking at such faint signals. Um, and then, of course, there's this other idea of the passion of it. I think that people hopefully walked away with the idea that there exist people, myself and other people like me, that are so interested in the study of the world around us
Yeah.
that that in and of itself is a thing. It's a thing worth supporting, so I'm hoping that when people have that experience, that they would think of other kinds of things, maybe in science or other research, that they would be willing to support either through their taxes or directly or whatever it
I
is.
think they do. I
Yeah,
think
so
they do.
that there's
They
certainly an,
realize how important it is to protect the night sky, and
yeah, exactly.
how important it is to, as you say, with their taxes to support science initiatives and to improve scientific literacy just in their community. Because, I believe, and I know you believe this, and certainly David believes this, and I think everybody watching this believes this. Science is good for you. Okay, science and the understanding of science and the popularization of science is will prepare us. I mean, there's really no other way to do this. It will prepare us, because we have to inspire people to get there. It will prepare us for the big challenges that we have in the future. The big problems that we have, whether, it's how to solve a pandemic, or how to deal with climate change, or how to get to the reality of what's going on, not only on our planet, but we're a spacefaring species. We live 24/7 in space now. Okay, we always have someone in space, and we have appliances all over the solar system, and we got some of them heading out into interstellar space. We're not reeling back. We're not going to go back, okay, to the cave. All right, we are. This is who we are, and astronomy is an incredible gateway. And learning from someone like you puts people on the really in the autobahn of propelling them through the understanding of the night skies through astrophotography.
Well, on the note of the night sky, one of the things, and you mentioned all of the interest, the instruments or things that are flying around over us, right? All of the spacecraft and stuff, all of the satellites that are orbiting the Earth. That's a thing as well, right? Because astronomy, the study of the universe, in some sense, you have to you coordinate or otherwise make a deal with this ever-growing thing of putting satellites into orbit around the Earth for good reasons.
Yeah.
Granted, it's for good reasons, but you have to be very thoughtful about doing it, or else you can trap yourself in this box of being unable to do certain things in research going forward. And then there's the aesthetics of, always seeing something flying around in the sky at all times.
Yes.
So one of the studies right now that I work on the team that I work with, is the understanding of exactly what it looks like, or what it's going to be like to have this many satellites orbiting the Earth. The big push right now is for the Starlink satellites to be launched, and they're being 60 whatever plus are launched every couple of months. And so trying to figure out ways so that doesn't overrun the sky with satellites at all times and make it impossible to do some of the the research that the largest telescopes in the world are going to try to do is important. So what we do here, and this is done by one of my colleagues, he wrote a very nice way to automate looking at, this is a Starlink satellite. So looking at these satellites, and you want to just basically measure how bright they are. This company is doing some things that hopefully will, either through a technique of turning their solar panels or changing the color of the satellite or whatever it is, to mitigate how much sunlight they reflect back to us when they are going overhead on the dark side. And so actually measuring how bright they are is an important thing to do. Someone has to do that.
Yeah.
And that's part of this project. So you can see a trail here, and basically every evening in the beginning of the night and the end of the night, we look at lots and lots of these things. And eventually the colleague that I work with, his name is Harry Krantz, he puts together all the statistics, and you can measure how bright they are. It's complicated by the fact that, depending upon when they go over, there's a phase angle. Basically, what phase the satellite is in determines how bright it is. Its range determines how bright it is. So it's not an easy thing to figure out initially. So you have to look at lots of satellites over and over to do this job of understanding what it's going to be. And then you can have informed conversations with satellite operators and companies to mitigate the problem.
Mhm.
Yep. So I just wanted to show you some data. That's one little piece of data that I'm currently doing. So not public outreach directly, although it's kind of a related, because astrophotographers, they don't necessarily want images. And this would certainly be the kind of thing that you want to understand. Here's another one flying through. What I like about this is it's going through the center of the field, which means that I set up the telescope pretty good, because it's
Yeah.
going through the center.
Yeah, it's dead on.
Yeah, published orbital elements correct.
Yeah.
But if they do that, and then my thing is aligned right, then it all works out. Another kind of thing is, let me just show you what a raw image. This is what a raw image looks like if you take a picture of something well known. Can you identify that field? Now, this is through the astrograph. It's almost a 4-degree field. I think it's pretty identifiable.
Sure. M78, the Flame Nebula, Barnard's Loop, and Friends. Yeah.
And a little bit of Barnard's Loop there. Exactly. So Orion's Belt is somewhere over here. So yeah, that's what a raw image looks like. This is a 10-minute exposure here, and you can see it's it's okay. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But really, this system is designed not for the astrophotography. It's for doing these other measurements. Another thing, and this is the thing that I do quite a bit of, is the study of the sky and how bright it is. That's something that isn't actually well understood in terms of how it might relate to being able to do other kinds of studies, like the study of these satellites and how bright they are, and how easy or hard is it going to be to see them under various conditions of sky brightness and so on. So that study is related to this, what's called space situational awareness, SSA work. And one element of that is to do what you would normally associate with the night sky brightness. No moon in the sky, just do the sky brightness. You get the natural sky glow, but you also get the city lights that are in the area, and you can figure out what a particular site's characteristic is. But there's another study which I find kind of interesting. I didn't know it was a thing, but when the moon is in the sky, how the sky brightness changes with the moon is even less understood. Because moonlight has a number of different things that affect the light that we see. It's scattered in our atmosphere. And the scattering happens in kind of the normal way, which is the Rayleigh scattering that causes the blue sky. But you also have Mie scattering, which is scattering off of little aerosols, little particles. And that's a much stronger effect the closer you get to the moon in angle. And if you're going to try to monitor a satellite that's orbiting the moon, we watched using this system. I don't have it on the screen right now, but we watched the moon is off to the right side in this particular frame right here. So it's not in the frame, but it's just off to the side. And we watched the Chinese spacecraft go. Yeah, I didn't want to say it because I don't know how to pronounce. Yeah, go right to the moon.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that gave us, some understanding of, can we do it? How close to the moon can you make those observations using a system like this? All that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting area. And this is the other thing that I do is I basically have programmed an automated way to take pictures of the regions of the sky around the moon in circles.
Yeah.
Ever increasing circles. And then I can show in a moment, if you don't have a question, I can show you some pictures of what the results look like. I think they're pretty. They're kind of cool.
Yeah, there is a question. Beatrice Hines is asking, what equipment does Adam use privately for astrophotography if he still does it privately?
Let's see. So most of my work has been through the auspices of others. That's been true for a very long time, and I'm very fortunate in that regard. so this work using this astrograph that I have access to is through my work at the Department of Astronomy at the University of Arizona. And then previous to that, in setting up founding the program, the Mount Lemmon Sky Center, I had access to that equipment. And prior to that, I had access to the equipment at Kitt Peak when I managed the program there. So I never really got around to buying a nice big telescope of my own. I didn't need to. It was my job. So personally, I have an 8-inch Celestron, and it's one I got when I was 13, but I don't use it to take any pictures. What I have been getting into, though, is taking pictures with some new equipment, and this is actually new for me. I finally have. This is the Canon RA, which is a really fantastic camera. So I'm really happy with it. And I even purchased, can you see the monster lens? Does that come across?
Huge. Yeah.
It is a huge, I've never owned a lens this big. So I'm now the proud owner of
Is
a
it like
very nice
f.9 or something? It's giant.
This is an 85 millimeter f1.2.
1.2.
So don't look up how expensive this is. It was an expensive lens, but I had to get one because I don't own any lenses. So this is one of the new things that I got.
Okay.
And I'll show you maybe the results of that work here by going to here. And okay, no, wrong. I'm on several different computers here. Go here, here, here. And not this one, but this one and this one. So this is with the RA.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I took this a bit ago because I thought it was kind of a nice picture to maybe highlight the heralding of the winter time. Especially, I took this on Mount Lemmon. Yeah. But this is with my own stuff. So this is with that camera using actually a regular lens, a wide angle lens on one of these star trackers. I have the Adventurer, the Star Adventurer.
Yeah.
And I set it up and I took 5-minute exposures, lots of them. And I took some exposures not tracking of the foreground scene, and then of course blended everything together and made this picture. So that's what it looks like for me to be. This is not an area that I am expert in, doing this kind of land sky kind of TWAN stuff, but that's what it looks like when I try to do it.
Yeah.
And this one is a similar kind of idea. Again, just with the RA, it's basically 30 minutes of time. So I combined 5 or 6 5-minute exposures.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about the Canon RA, since it's modified, it allows to be able to detect the red hydrogen alpha emission, that you can see Bernard's loop, you can see the stars. I did do another cool trick here, which is I blended this image from the camera with another image I took that had a filter in front of the lens. And that filter made stars fuzzy. So you can blend the two pictures together, and then it shows off the bright stars that we recognize to be Orion with all of the nebulosity. In fact, if you look closely, you can see a little green blob here, which is the comet that was in the field at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Atlas M3, I guess.
You got it.
Yep.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So that's the answer to the question. I've done some things with my own equipment, some other interesting things that I've done with my own equipment that, a lot of people would say, well, Adam, you're always on top of a mountain using the best stuff in the world, which is true. But sometimes when I use my own equipment, I think you can judge for yourself that, sometimes I still use those skills in a reasonable way. So I was very fortunate to get a chance. My wife and I drove up to Idaho to see the eclipse here in 2017, the solar eclipse. It was spectacular. Yeah. But I used my skills to combine, the images of the corona with longer exposures that enabled me to see the Earth shine, and that's what I got. So that's what it looks like if I take my deep sky processing skills and try to do something with, a total eclipse or things like that. There should also be a comet. I drove hundreds of miles to get this. It was not clear in Arizona for this. So I had to drive far enough away from the monsoons, far enough to the west to get away from Phoenix, because I'm looking north, towards Phoenix from where I am, in order to get the comet.
Wow.
And there was one night where I had that clear night, and
Yeah.
if I drove to 300 miles, I could do it. So that's what it looked like from Arizona with my Canon RA and a 300 millimeter lens.
Wow.
Goodness. Yeah.
It was great.
I saw a lot of images of this comet.
Oh yeah, there. And by the way, there are tons of images that I think.
No, but this is really one of the finer ones I've seen.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
From Arizona, this was a good one. Yeah, this is a good one from Arizona because it was really hard to get a nice picture. It was lower in the sky. The weather wasn't cooperating. It was a little more difficult. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Super.
Adam, the world of astro imaging has changed so much. When we were young, you had to sit there, and cameras were very much more primitive. They were digital, and
yes,
you had an illuminated reticle eyepiece to keep a star on. It was like being in a prison camp for an hour.
Okay.
The thing tracking. But things have changed so much now technologically. What would be? I mean, people are even shooting, with iPhones, some quasi images through afocally and so on. What would your advice be to people who are beginning as astro imagers now?
Yeah.
Well, I think that like what I've been doing, these CMOS DSLR cameras are, so good compared to even film, right? They're just so amazing that starting with a nice DSLR camera on a tripod, I would say with a tracker though, you learn how to set up a tracker.
Sure.
That does 90% of what you need to really get into it, because once you can acquire some really good data, then you can bring it into the software and process images, just like I showed a moment ago with Orion. All of that is easily done with that, by learning how to do it in that way. Yeah, so I would say a digital camera with just a lens, some lens. It doesn't need to be a telescope, is a great way to enter that thing. And I'm wondering, I'm going to go as early as I can here. I don't remember if I put them here or not. I'm sorry, I didn't. This is film. That's film. That's Hale Bopp with film.
Wow.
I was going to show you a film image that I took, was exactly the kind where you were guiding through the reticle. I don't know where it is right now, but guiding through the reticle for, hours on end or whatever. It's crazy. Yeah. Where you could barely see the star, right? It was using averted vision just to see the star in the reticle. Hopefully you're guiding on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was tough. That was tough.
Very hard. And it's freezing cold and
and your eyes tearing up, and you don't want to look away, and
you had to really want an hour-long exposure in those days.
I did. Yeah, we did. It was crazy.
Yeah, and you think about what amateur astronomers went through, but think about what they did at Mount Wilson in the 40s.
Oh.
That was tough. That was tough. Really slow emulsions, hours and shooting all night, guiding all night, manually guiding all night.
One of the funny things about doing that though is it teaches you quite a bit about the equipment. I remember this is going back to the LX200. One of the things about the LX200 is that there was a periodic error.
Of course.
And there was also a backlash in the declination. Yeah. So in the declination drive, you can press the button to guide, and maybe you get a reaction. Maybe it moves up a little. Yeah. You press again, moves up. Now, if you're going to move down, you have to press 5 times before the star will even start to move down. Yeah.
You had to unbalance the declination axis to keep it loaded.
It's changing. It doesn't work, but there's a trick. The trick is that you learn, just maybe due to your polar alignment error, you learn what direction it's drifting.
Yeah.
And what you do is you only press one button. You never press the other button. So you correct with the, maybe it's the north button. You correct with the north button. And if you overshoot, do not press that other button. You just let it drift back. And then you're only getting a reaction in the one direction, and you never have to worry about the backlash. The trick is just don't overshoot. Always do small adjustments. And but then you learn the equipment, you learn all about the mechanics of it. And that is a brute force teacher.
When you are teaching people how to do this, do you recommend they don't learn how to use an auto guider and they actually manually guide?
I don't think you can manually. Today's digital sensors are so sensitive.
Yeah.
That typically what happens for a beginner is that you want to, this is why I suggested a digital camera with a tracker, is you learn how to basically polar align the tracker.
Yeah.
And then you want to align it with enough precision that you can take a 2 or 3 or 4 minute exposure. That's it. That's all you need. There's no guiding involved.
Right.
You just take multiples in that situation. Then when you get later, when you have a real mount with a camera of some sort, and guiding, then if you want to automate it or so on, guiding obviously becomes important if you have the mount that requires it. Yeah, it is nice though when you have a guider. Wow. Again, it's one of those next evolutionary steps in terms of being able to get quality data. So it's certainly a nice thing.
You did an image of just a single star. I think it was Betelgeuse.
Yes.
Which I thought this is also something that's different. You don't see astrophotographers just going after a single star much. And, look at this image.
Beautiful.
It might be fuzzy on your screen. I'm sorry if it is, but
you can see.
Yeah, I thought that, for me, I thought the idea of just focusing on one star, a very famous star, but just seeing the environs around it, there's some little clouds and things that are next to it that I didn't think people ever thought, it's in front of stuff, and you just don't really necessarily think about that all the time. So that's another thing that I've tried really hard to do in my astrophotography, is to offer different ways of looking at the universe, to really be as creative in what I'm trying to communicate as far as through the astrophotography. So in this case, I'm communicating that, there are bright stars in the sky, but that doesn't mean, who in their right mind would spend 5 hours staring at Betelgeuse, right? But it's surprising what you do get when you spend 5 hours staring at Betelgeuse. Yeah. So that takes a little guts, right? And then you're rewarded for it. Right. Another example of this kind of thing, I think, is the Pleiades. Let me show you. I don't know where they are. If you see them, let me know. They've got to be. They're bluish. There's a lot of blue. I don't see them.
Hey Adam, it's probably in star clusters.
Oh, that's right. I'm considering it a nebula, but it's probably you're probably right. That's where I put it. Thank you. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I consider this image, there are lots of pictures of the Pleiades, but I wanted to present the image in a way that I thought was different. It had a different feel to it. And for me, the feeling here is that I really wanted to, I'm not trying to raise the saturation. That's not it. This is not blood red up here, but there is a redness, a pinkness to it in the top right, whereas there's blue around here. And then there's these other clouds of brown. You can even see, if you look closely at some of the blue bits, that they are in the foreground of the brown bits, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a depth there that I just felt I wanted to present this image in a way that's different. A lot of people, I think, when they process, sometimes they choose, one element or another, and there are common themes for ways of presenting objects. This is not the most contrasty image at all, but by not going for that very high contrast image, I think it shows off a different element of something that's very, very well known and
And
photographed and so on.
and what's kind of cool here, Adam, while we're still on it, is,
Yeah.
it's only years old, a few years old, that, this idea of the reflection nebulosity, particularly around Merope, but a number of the stars,
Yeah.
was just kind of an assumption that it was leftover dust from the formation of the cluster. It's so young.
Yeah, but it's, yeah.
There are these proper motion studies that, it's actually moving through the
passing.
cluster,
Yep.
this cloud of dust, and they're unassociated.
Yeah,
From a
right.
velocity standpoint, which is really interesting. You kind of get a sense of these different layers of gas and dust in this image in that very strong way.
Yeah. And maybe one more here.
Real quick, Adam. Sorry, real quick, Adam.
Yes,
Go back to that picture.
Yeah.
There is one thing I am going to point out when people look at images like this is if you look at the overall color of the blue and the background is brown, it tells you that the stars are lighting up the foreground as opposed to the background.
Yeah.
Because you can see the red stars in the background, which are giving off some of that color into the back, but it's the foreground is all lit up by the Seven Sisters essentially, and then every other star around it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very cool. Just to get really artsy, this is totally artsy, right? But I'm also inspired by other people that do some interesting things. So the inspiration for this work actually comes from Stefan, and I never pronounce his name out loud, so it's either Sipe or Sipe. It's probably German.
Okay.
And he published an image long ago that it's a common technique, but he did a very good job of it, where you take in focus stars and then you slowly blur them so they're out of focus, and it makes little flag-like cones of stars, like arcs of stars,
Right.
in like a star trail-like picture. And the colors of the stars are, of course, beautiful because you're smearing the light of the stars across many pixels, and the pixels don't saturate, and that produces very high quality color for those stars. And I thought to myself, well, I have this instrument rotator. So this is not of the sky. This is M11. It's just, M11, the star cluster, nothing special. But what I did is I rotated the rotator and just, took the picture and exposed. And then I'm basically smearing the light of every star into these concentric, it's not found, into these concentric rings, which really illustrate all of the colors of the stars. And there are more colors here than you might expect, because many stars might be at the same radial distance. So you're actually blending multiple stars into some of the rings, and it ends up having color that you wouldn't see in any one star. So that's experimental, but again, it's a different way of kind of looking at the sky, looking at the universe.
But you can see that a lot of those stars, Adam, in the outer concentric rings are reddish. Those are not cluster members.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is neat, Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And you do get, if you were to do a radio profile here, just in terms of brightness, but also color, you would see that. You would see that behavior. Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah. Sorry, this is an old image, so I haven't linked the high res version. Oh, actually, that's not true. Just circles. There they are. There's the circles. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Another kind of interesting, one more perspective, and then I'll stop. There's all kinds of, this is an obvious one. This was inspired by an old, very old, actually, NOAO, and basically Kit Peak image, where the astronomer took a picture of the Andromeda galaxy and the moon to demonstrate the angular dimension on the sky. Now that, for me, this is as good as it gets for perspective. This is what you want to show people, because when you look with your eye, even under a dark sky, Andromeda does not look as large as not really as large as the moon. And so when you show people, there it is, and then show a picture, and you can really see the angular extent, and then you can compare to some other objects, you can really get a feel that we're just not seeing with our eyes the universe as it is, or at least as we might be able to perceive it by using these surrogate senses of these other much more sensitive sensors. So I thought that was just a brilliant perspective. But the image that I remember seeing long ago, I wasn't, it didn't strike me as really, captivating. And so I made my own version long ago. This is kind of a remake of it, but it's the same idea. But the perspective to me is the most important part.
Yeah.
And
Look at that. Jeez.
I was going to show you something there, but I have to go to my other website to do it. So, okay. Anyway, I will pause and stop talking for a moment.
No, I mean, it's incredible, so, Richard Lighthill is commenting. He says, thanks, Adam, for showing me that it's worth giving lots of time with astrophotography, even with quote unquote boring areas of the night sky.
Okay, let me show you. Let's look at another one here. I think that okay, well, all kinds of stuff. This thing, come on, what is that?
Wow, look at that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So there is an HST image of this, but it's amazing you can do that with an amateur telescope. Now,
Right.
Granted, big telescope, but still within the realm of, there are people now in Chile that own these fantastic telescopes, and
Sure.
it's within the realm of amateur astronomy to generate pictures like this. Or let me scroll up here. Well, I'll just show this one because to me, it's really an important one as well. You asked me earlier, we talked about the gamut of things that interest me.
Yeah.
So this is a relatively, it's not a super popular group of galaxies. It's cool though, because if you spend time, and I don't know if this comes across on your screen, but there's a wonderful star stream or arc of
Almost goes completely around.
Yeah, tidal loop, if you will.
Yeah.
Which I found fascinating with this thing. It is in some way, interacting with probably all of these galaxies. And this interaction just blows my mind. First of all, the peanut shape here, X, is probably due to the fact that we're looking at the spiral galaxy edge on. It's probably a barred spiral. That's typical to have that kind of X-like shape. And then we have a small interloper, which probably has star formation turning on because all of its gas is being made to move and contract and whatever to form new stars. So we have the bluishness of that. We have the H2 regions, therefore also popping with stars in here. And then we have dust, unbelievable in the foreground. I've never seen this in this striking way in another galaxy, where we have huge clouds of dust. I mean, these clouds of dust are probably 1,000 light years in extent, right? That are in the foreground being stripped from this small galaxy. We see a star stream like this, but here we actually see the interloper with its star stream passing in front of the illuminating part of the galaxy. That's the kind of stuff that gets me excited. That's the kind of thing that I would spend forever on to be sure that I could detect. And then, of course, in the processing of it, to be able to either reveal or display and render in that final image. So that to me is that's the exciting thing.
It is exciting. I love galaxies.
Yeah, galaxies are fun.
To look at that image and you see so many faint background galaxies too. It's so cool,
Yeah. Yeah, lots of cool things. Okay, again, I will pause, but there are many other things.
Well, let's see if we have any questions here. Bethel Douglas Barrett's comments: "You are highly artistic. Do you think that you are a natural, or strictly learned, a combo of each?"
So I want to be very careful, and I want to say this. I happen to have my partner in life, my wife, is an artist.
Okay.
And let me see. I'm going to do this. Can you see the black painting on the wall there?
Yes.
She painted that
Hmm.
for me. It was a gift.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it has some meaning. Now I'm gonna mess up my camera, probably like I'm
Right.
crooked or something.
It's okay.
So I know what artistic sensibility is about. I know the talent to see things and be able to deconstruct it with your brain and somehow do that in some way. I know I'm not artistic. What I am is observant, I think, when it comes to the data. And I also think I have something of a vision. I do have a desire when I process one of these images to, in my mind's eye, I know what I want it to look like in the end, based on the data that I have in hand. There is, as I've said before, there's a delicate balance between, what there is and what you want it to be, and as far as the processing of the information. So I think I have a strong sense of where I want it to be. And with the skills that I've developed, I'm many times able to reach that goal of, rendering the picture in a way that really strikes me. And if that strikes other people, then that's good.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's you know, uh, I'm breathless. I mean, it's just incredible, you know.
Well,
Um,
one of the things that I do, I work at the Department of Astronomy, but I also try to share in a different way in terms of these very ideas that I'm expressing now, is through the instructional stuff that I do. So I have an entire other thing where people can learn from this experience that I've had in astrophotography over the years, through instructional video. So this is the website,
yeah.
atomblockphotos.com. I'm just now releasing something that will be of interest to a very particular group of people that use a particular software to process their images
Wow.
called PixInsight.
Nick's insight.
Yeah, so I'm going to be making PixInsight TV. So in addition to the videos that I make available, I'm going to be making some more public, easy ways to kind of connect with me and what I'm doing. So if that's of interest to some in the audience, then
Well, that is
consider
the
that.
website I put
Yeah,
into the post.
very
So
good. So this is where the instructional videos are. And by the way, David, this is with apologies to you. Your competitor magazine is here, but ignore that for now.
That's okay. Every hobby needs a small magazine too. That's all right.
Okay, good.
We love S&P. Yeah.
That's okay. And yeah, so this page is of course where the pictures are released. So if you want to see when new pictures are published, visit, this page, or certainly find me in many other ways of Facebook and other places, right? Do you mind if I show you a little bit more of the
that's what.
observatory that I've been using?
Yeah, that's what we're here
Because
for.
many of this image right here that you're looking at on the homepage, that was generated. Let me just go ahead and show you the picture, because that one I do like. That's the region right around Rigel, and it's a 4-pane mosaic. In fact, the Department of Astronomy just today gave
Wow.
me a nice little nod of recognition.
Yeah.
They said that this was the best picture of the department, blah blah blah. So that was really kind of them, and this was the one they liked.
Yeah.
That's got to be the deepest image of the Witch Head region that I've ever seen, I think, as well. Again, with those overlapping layers of nebula.
And I processed this one in the same way. Actually, this is almost contemporary with the Pleiades image. So the Pleiades came first, and I used that lesson to kind of render this image. But this is 4 panes. It might not be obvious here, but each, there's like 4 panes here. So this one took a long time to kind of put together.
Yeah, it is not obvious at all. I mean, it's
Yeah, well, no, I hope you don't see the seams. That's
no,
but, but it may not be obvious that I'm not showing basically the full resolution. And if you look at full resolution, it loses the impact because you're zoomed in so much. One of the funny things about this telescope, again, it's really been optimized for doing that research that I described earlier. Each pixel here, these are, the camera has 12 micron pixels. So each pixel is 5 arc seconds, 5 arc second pixels. That's pretty low resolution. So undersampled stars basically. And so you won't really ever see detail or a lot of striking detail in small objects. It's really kind of this overall wide field, take a step back perspective. But one of the nice things about offering that perspective is that when you, and I'll show you the most recent image, when you have that opportunity to take a wide field image like this. So this is a very quiet image right around Gamma Cassiopeia, right? And these objects down here are the very well-known IC59 and IC63 being illuminated by Gamma Cassiopeia. But these things in their own right are truly spectacular. So now I'm going to, I think the fastest way for me to do this is this. Yeah, that'll do it. So that is this thing here. Let's see if I can go back. Is this part here through a much larger telescope is here. So I've been fortunate to have had this opportunity to, through all of these years, to image things both in a high resolution and low resolution and offer that, share that perspective so you can really see, here's what it looks like kind of zoomed out and then zoomed in with a very similar style and processing. So I think that offers kind of a kind of, I was going to say stability, but not, it's another word that starts with an S. I can't think right now.
I don't know that
repeatability, because I can't think of the word right now, between these images. And that offers, I think, it makes it easier to see that perspective.
I don't know of any other imagers who are doing that, Adam, who are taking matching views, if you will, that are wide field, very deep, and then high resolution close-ups. I don't think anyone's doing that except you.
There are some, but I think that comes with just, it's just time. It's just years. It's hard to take that many images unless you've been doing it for 20 years. So or more.
Now, do you mix these images? Will you take like?
I haven't really done much of that. There are people, Gendler, for example. There are people that do that. I haven't really done much of that. That's another area, I guess. A lot of the images, I guess, I've taken aren't really amenable to that. But I imagine how I would do it, but no, I really haven't done much of that. Another area I haven't done much of, and something that I would be interested in getting into, is the narrowband imagery. Narrowband imagery lends itself to very high contrast images, which people love. And you also have much greater freedom with, the color palette that you choose.
Sure.
But one of the things, of course, that I like to point at for the RGB imaging is the broadband imaging. You have many more constraints, right? And it's harder in the sense that the details and the light and so on usually doesn't have that much contrast. And so there are these constraints that are imposed. And I wonder, I know that people do the narrowband imagery because they don't necessarily have the sky to be able to do broadband imaging. But broadband imaging it may become a lost art. It's tough.
Well, certainly, I mean, you see people in suburban environments that are able to do some amazing stuff with narrowband imaging.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I understand, and it's great. It's something that I want to get into, but it of course takes a lot of time because you have to take long exposures.
Yes. Yeah, 20, 30, 80 hours, 100 hours exposures, right?
Exactly. Yep. And that means you have to have your own equipment or, your own stuff to be able to spend that kind of time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, David, are there or you know and Adam, are there other areas that you'd like to cover before we
Yeah,
wrap up? We've
let me
been
show
on.
you. Let me show you just
Okay.
because it's what I'm working with now.
Yeah.
This is the astrograph because I mentioned that wide field image, right? So
Sure.
this is the instrument that took it. You can barely see up on top. There's a camera, um, and I should be able to do the following if I tell it to. I mean, everyone has seen telescopes move, but it's fun to be able to see a telescope move. So there it goes, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's moving, it's finding home, which is no big deal. But I have it all automated. And for research purposes, it's automated in such a way that, you know, I have programs here where I've programmed it to do basically my evil bidding of whatever it is that we need it to do. It's coupled with software that is the commercially available stuff, but then to do some fairly specific things that most amateurs wouldn't do, like, you know, take pictures of the sky around the moon. Who does that? You had to write some additional code in order to be able to do it. But in doing so, so I lost my thing. Hang on, let me log back in here. I'll show you the results of that work just so you can see what it looks like to study the sky. This is what the night sky looks like over, actually, is that? Yeah, this should be Mount Lemmon. Yes, this is this is one of the recent Mount Lemmon images.
Okay.
So it's just a plot of the colors just to give you, it has no importance other than it's just giving us from
dark.
brightest to dimmest, right?
Sure.
So red here means bright, where something blue or dark blue means the darker sky. So it's obvious that the sky over Mount Lemmon is dark at the zenith, but for a good fraction of the south and southwest, you know, the city really imposes that light. So this is a measure of what's going on, and you'll see it's probably hard to read here. If I zoom in a little, got things here. There we go. So maybe if I go 200%, can you see some numbers?
Mm-hmm.
So on this particular night, you know, 21 at zenith, approximately 21st magnitude or so is really what you're measuring at zenith. The surprising thing is that a lot of people might say when they go to dark sites that they use these. This is not an SQM. This is actually done through the telescope, but we also have the sky quality meters being used as well. And the funny thing is a lot of people might record darker skies, but being at altitude, it's easier to see the sky glow. And the sky does glow, which is really remarkable. Guess what color the sky is brightest in? Do you guys know this? This surprised me when I first learned this stuff.
The brightest
What's that?
color?
Yeah, what color is the sky, the night sky, when you no moon in the sky, take a picture through all these filters, what color is it brightest in?
I don't know, yellow and green, something like that.
Yeah, so air glow, one of the emission lines is in that green color, but
Yeah.
the strongest lines are actually in the red.
Red.
So when you look in the Sloan Z filter, like this, look at the magnitude of the sky. It's 18th magnitude. And and you'll notice here towards the horizon, it looks like the whole horizon is now a city lights, but it's not. That's just because you're looking due to the increased air mass through more of that kind, although it's extincted, but you're still looking through more of that air glow stuff too. So the sky is actually quite bright in deep red. I just found that really fascinating. Much brighter than when you look in the V in the green, which is what the previous one was. So yeah, that's the kind of cool thing that you can look at. And then you can do cool things with that information. So for example, we had here during the summer, this was in, I don't have the date here. This was in, was it July or August? We had terrible fires in California. And well, we had fires here earlier. It almost burned the observatory here. So we actually evacuated our telescope and we ended up sitting in biosphere. That's why this says B2 here. It stands for biosphere 2. but we were taking pictures of the sky through the smoke. So there were times that I had pictures of the night sky with no smoke, and then pictures of the sky with the smoke. And that's what these two images are of. And you can actually see what happens to things when there's smoke and no smoke. So the no smoke is over here on the right, and you can see the glow of the city. Biosphere is northeast, basically, of the city, similar direction, obviously, as Mount Lemmon. So you actually have the city glow down here. But look on the left, when there's smoke in the air, the sky at the the top of the sky, it's similar in darkness. But then when you look towards the city, all of those smoke particles are scattering light more. And so the brightness of the city increases that much more. So that's it's really interesting to be able to see those kinds of changes and things. And then finally, I talked about the moon. Well, with the measurements of the moon, this is what it looks like if you make all those measurements and then you display basically a interpolated result of those measurements around the moon. And do you see how it gets much brighter much more quickly when you're close to the moon here? That is indicative of the fact that there's different, like I mentioned earlier, different scattering things going on here. And then you can generate from that data charts that look like this, that model. There's the people create models and these mathematical models of what the sky should look like. And then there is my observations that you can see they're a reasonably close match. Do you see the rings here though? See the little circles?
Yeah.
That's weird. That's weird stuff. These are circles in brightness. That's not a position that you're looking at here.
Okay.
So, well, it is a position, but it's a difference in somehow the brightness is changing at a given position. So I think that what we're looking at here is because I'm taking pictures of the moon, depending upon the amount of air that I look at through the air mass, it changes the magnitude of the amount of light that I guess we're seeing in that bit of sky, and makes like these little rings until you get high overhead. And then when the air mass is low, you don't see as many rings, So these are all the things to consider, study, and understand when it comes to that kind of research. So I just wanted to point out, this is the telescope that's doing that stuff, and it is doing it both the satellite stuff and the night sky brightness stuff. And I occasionally, in between the two, can take some pretty pictures, which is fun.
Right.
Yep.
It seems that there should be more telescopes doing this night sky brightness.
There are a lot of people that do it, but I think that we're doing it in a way that is another level of let's say focus, because we've got not only the telescope, but we have the sky quality meters, and then we're also doing another kind of adjustment, variation of the sky thing, especially with the moon. So together we're getting this ensemble of data. A lot of people, I think, concentrate on one particular aspect or another particular aspect. We really have a larger ensemble of information that we're looking at, and that's interesting.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
great.
Adam, we've talked about, the past and our origins and 20 years ago. Where do you think you see astroimaging and how it relates to the astronomy hobby 20 years from now?
That's interesting. Well, I certainly think that light pollution is probably not going to magically diminish. So the sky will be ever brighter. And I also think that at the same time, there will be a different kind of access to the sky. I think that there will be more publicly available data coming from large surveys like LSST and so on. So I think the way that amateur astronomers might consider the hobby would be a combination of what they do combined with perhaps what publicly available data comes from, big data comes from that, because astronomers are not going to be able to, they're going to be able to, like a vacuum cleaner, collect all of this information, but no one is going to be able to look at it all and digest it all You're going to have to, focus on one element or another. And I think that um, there's going to be a space for the amateur astronomer whose hobby it is to enjoy space imagery, perhaps even science, to delve into that through these public data universes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that that's probably 20 years from now. I think that that'll be an important part of what amateur astronomy is about, because I do think that unfortunately, it gets harder to find places where you can put your telescope and set up your own equipment and do things. So I still think that'll happen, but I think it'll be more strongly coupled with what professionals are doing when they release these huge data sets in astronomy. Probably a combination of the two.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you think that will create stronger, I mean, just de facto, because of that, there'll be
Yeah.
much stronger the pro-am projects?
I do, because I just don't think, especially initially in the early times,
Yeah.
it'll probably be the case that the pipe of data will be so large. It's not hard to collect, with today's technology and what they intend to build, to collect that data, but it's always a catch up. I mean, this is true with our computers, right?
Yeah.
Every time you get a new computer, there's always some software that slows it down. It's always hard to catch up with the technology to digest all the information or all the software, whatever it is, to do the job. So I think that there will be a space for the amateur to really participate in some interesting ways. One of the ways that I think is really spectacular, and we had a speaker that came from my department of astronomy at Stewart Observatory to speak, was the idea of being able to find these examples of optical detections of gravitational wave events. Perhaps, you might have an optical component of two neutron stars or black
That would
holes
be
colliding.
interesting to discover. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And being able to somehow participate in that. Wow. I mean, that's a whole new frontier.
Yeah.
And I think that would be really cool. Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you. Simon Tang came on to
Yeah, I
the
see him.
show a little bit later. I know that you guys are friends. Simon's a good friend of mine as well, and
Yeah, he's been helping me out.
broadcasting together. I think he has a few questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adam, I know you've taken a lot of pictures of the night sky. And recently I saw, was it the Crab Nebula or one of the planetary nebulas, when they've looked at it in the past and then current and it's shrunk. Have you actually gone through any of your older data to compare against new data to see what's moved and what's changed?
Yes, I've certainly done that with many things. I don't have them handy at the moment because they're movies. Some of them are on my website though. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be here. The Crab Nebula obviously is a cool one to show that. I have one that shows the motion of Cassiopeia A, which I thought was kind of cool. And I've seen someone do the Veil Nebula, which I also thought was pretty cool. I haven't seen the shrinking one. Well, unless you're talking about something like McNeil's Nebula, which is an example where it's a variable nebula, depending upon whatever's covering up the star or something like that. It disappears for years, and then suddenly you see the nebulosity. That one I've monitored over time and watched how that one's changed. I don't personally have a nice comparison, but there are some people that do have a very nice comparison of those. Yeah, go ahead.
And then last question for now. A lot of people, especially when I see some of these pictures and you're shooting broadband, is color interpretation. How is that usually determined other than the spectra that it gives off? So you know that in the visible spectrum, this part's in red, this part's in blue, but what is it that we do to give the varying shades? And so we know from the people who are watching at home, when we see a picture, that's its true color if you could increase its brightness.
So As you know, one of the things that I put together is I'm now just going to point to my YouTube channel, so you can look me up on YouTube. And I have a very nice, I think it's nice because I worked so hard on it. I have a video that I call the interpretation of astronomical images, and it explains in much greater detail what the answer to the question. But what I would say is that I do consider color in broadband imaging to be one of the constraints. So when I do the color imagery, broadband imagery, you know, I do what I can to remove any bias from the instrumentation because I don't want the instrument to determine the color of the object. And I really don't want to decide, you know, the color either, because one of the, again, going back to what Scott asked me, one of the things is that sometimes you take a picture of things where you literally have no other reference anywhere to compare it with. So I actually want to know, you know, what color is hitting the sensor, really. And so you can do that by calibrating your instrument using various techniques, some kind of photometric calibration that will give you a proper white balance so that it is analogous to, like if I took a picture, you know, with a regular digital camera, that would be the same image if this were sensitive enough that my astronomical camera is recording of the object, whatever it might be. So the other element of that is that because I've taken pictures over the years, when you look at these objects, because I have that consistent way of approaching the color balance, the color differences that you see between this object here and this object here are due to the object and not a choice that I made. And for me, I like to be able to display that astrophysical component of my portfolio, if you will, by trying to assign a consistent way of assigning those colors using a photometric color calibration of some sort. So that's the long answer to that question. But look at the video, and then you can appreciate why you might see the differences in colors here, and why, as an astrophotographer, I would spend an inordinate amount of detail or energy trying to maintain some consistency so that, in my case, I like that idea that when you look at all of these images, these different colors are due to something about the object itself more than something that I decide.
That's awesome. Very good.
Terrific. Congratulations, Adam, on what you've done. It's a tremendous, you're still a young guy. Anyone's measure, anyone's measure.
Yeah. You got a
But
long ways to go.
You've already got a lifetime legacy of just fantastic images, and you should be, well, you know, incredibly proud, and you are, and you're very well known. And oh, this is a cool image. I remember this one. Yes.
Do you know the name of it? Is it covered? Do you know the name of that?
This is the Cygnus X1 field, isn't it?
No.
Is it in Cygnus?
This is something that I missed discovering myself by 2 years.
Oh,
this is next to the Heart Nebula.
Oh yes, okay.
It's Weibo 1. The funny thing is, anyone that takes a picture of the Heart Nebula, if you look off to the side and you zoom in, you'll see this tiny little oval thing. And it is a rare barium type, I don't know, planetary nebula. It's this weird thing. I just think it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
It's tiny. It's absolutely tiny, but it's cool. Yeah.
It's great.
So yeah, thank you, David. I appreciate the sentiment very much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Adam and David, I really appreciate you both being on. Simon, thank you for chiming in. And I think this has been a really interesting and enlightening interview, and you really brought your game on, Adam. These are images that'll be, when I try to go to sleep tonight, they're going to be like burned in my memory. So, and I think I'm going to have to spend a lot more time on your website. Really great stuff.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm glad thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm glad you enjoyed the whole thing. I certainly had a great time.
Yeah, we look forward to having you on again. And
Cool.
is there anything you want to add before we sign off?
No, no, I think we're good. I
That's
think
it.
if you, I think people now probably know the website where to find
Yeah.
me. I think people know there's a YouTube channel, and they know that I make video tutorials on how to process these images, so they know where to find that. Yeah, I think we're doing good, and I would, of course, always encourage people to, support these public outreach endeavors wherever they might be.
Sure.
So we here locally, we have the Mount Lemmon Sky Center and other things like that. So
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
good place to look for as a resource and as a way to experience the universe. And it's just there's no other thing like it. It's a unique way to really get involved and to really to feel it.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
a good way to put it. That's awesome. Thank you very much. We will see you all tomorrow. We are preparing for our next global star party, which will be on December 21st. We've got astronomers from the Philippines to Canada and hopefully throughout Europe participating. So I'm busy inviting people, but if you're listening in the audience right now and you're interested in participating in this, we are looking for astrophotographers who are going to try to capture this great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. And we're going to have a morning session, and midday session, and an evening session. It will be co-hosted by the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. They already have a great lineup of speakers and astrophotographers as well. And what I understand, also the Astronomical League is interested in participating in this. They have a great relationship with the RASC as well. So it should be something pretty interesting. And I've not done one of these global star parties all day long. So this will be a great and fun event, and hope that you can join in. Thanks again, gentlemen. Thank you, Simon and David and Adam. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. See you
Have a good
soon.
night. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Be safe.
Like a THX thing.